So I was excited to come on here and talk about how Tom Aspinall is the most dangerous human being in the history of hand-to-hand combat sports. And I was excited to rant and rave about the fact, or, that's debatable now, of Tom Aspinall being the greatest heavyweight in the history of mixed martial arts. And instead, although it was an entertaining fight while it lasted, we had the most anticlimactic main event of the entire year. One of the most anticlimactic and tragic buzzkill main events I've ever seen. Tom Aspinall gets double eye poked at the end of the first round when it was actually really competitive. I'm going to talk about who I thought was winning and all that, but Tom Aspinall gets double eye poked. And initially, when the eye poke first made contact with Tom Aspinall's eyeballs, it wasn't that impactful. And then Gane, when you watch the replay, it looks like Gane kind of posts his hand on Aspinall's face to sort of push him away, and then his fingers go into Aspinall's eyes. And Tom Aspinall takes a timeout. The ref gives him a timeout, and I'm thinking, okay, that's unfortunate, but we're going to get back to it in a couple of seconds. This is going to be a minute, 2 minutes max. We'll be right back in there. And wow, it's going to be Tom Aspinall going into the second round. John Jones is going to be talking about it. Fans are going to be talking about it. Oh my goodness, he didn't finish Gane as fast as Jones. But I'm thinking the fight is going to resume. And again, this was close. This was a competitive fight. Gane did a lot better than I expected him to do. And I was starting to get worried for Tom. But either way, we're watching him on the side of the octagon talking to the doctors. And I start getting really worried when I hear Tom Aspinall say, I can't fucking see. He said that. And I'm thinking, oh no. We're a couple of minutes in, and I don't know, there was just a vibe I had that Tom Aspinall was not in a good place. Like, he really couldn't see, and he was really upset about it. Okay? I didn't like his body language. I didn't like the way that he was talking, and of course, he was very upset that he got eye poked. Obviously, he got on the mic after they called the fight, and he said, why are you all fucking booing? I didn't land the eye poke, right? And I get it. But after the 2-minute mark, even though we had another 3 minutes of waiting, it was clear, this fight was going to be called off. And it was wishful thinking to think it wouldn't be, given the way Tom Aspinall was carrying himself, the body language, how he was repeatedly saying, I can't see, I can't see. And, I'm sure it must have been bad. I honestly do think this was a really bad eye poke. And I think that if you're Tom Aspinall, why risk it? Why go out there? Even if you're going to shoot a takedown, it's like you got to take down stuff early on in this fight anyway. If you're only able to operate at 15% capacity, and this is the big moment, you've had a 1.5 year long layoff, the pressure is on. I understand his decision to not continue that fight and not want to go into it blind as a bat, pale as a ghost. And it sucks. It sucks for everyone. It sucks for him. It sucks for all of us that this is the main event after a kind of mediocre main card, a boring co-main event, a pretty boring feature fight as well. I mean, don't get me wrong, Umar versus Bautista was okay. The co-main event wasn't even that bad. It was just, I really wanted a big finish, or I wanted a really interesting fight. And this was an amazing fight while it lasted. Let's talk about the fight. Tom was having issues. Tom was having issues landing his big Shelly right hand on the chin of Ciryl Gane. And Ciryl Gane had Tom Aspinall's nose bloodied up in about a minute. A minute into this fight, Tom Aspinall was leaking. A couple of minutes into this fight, Tom Aspinall looked like someone threw paint on his face. And Aspinall was in there. He was landing a couple of those crafty spinning body kicks, and he was landing some hard leg kicks. He was landing a couple of head kicks on the guard, landed a good body kick as soon as the fight started as well, and landed a couple of jabs, landed a couple of big shots upstairs, but he was whiffing a lot with his combinations, his boxing combinations. Gane was doing a really good job at staying out at range and, moving laterally across the octagon. I felt like Gane was having a perfect first round because think about it. Aspinall is the super fast, explosive knockout artist that you have to be super wary of. And the fact that Gane made it close and in my opinion was actually a little bit ahead and was the one getting damage off and kind of frustrating Aspinall a little bit. There was a moment where Aspinall feinted a spin because he realized mid-spin he wasn't going to be able to land a spinning back kick, and he looked at Gane and kind of laughed at him. But I was thinking in that moment, like, I don't know, man. That's like a Wonder Boy Thompson buddy moment. I don't know. That's not the Tom Aspinall, honey badger, put someone out cold in 1 minute kind of thing that's not the energy that we get when Tom Aspinall's out here cracking people out cold in a minute, right? It turned into a little bit of a buddy fest. Started to look like a bit of a sparring match. Not because the shots that were landing weren't landing hard. There was damage being done on both sides, but because I stopped feeling like a KO was imminent at any moment. And that's how you know things were going well for Gane. And I'm very impressed with how well Gane was doing. And I'm also, I was saying going into this, unlike a lot of other fighters, Gane's not going to have a big speed advantage over a guy like Aspinall, who's known for being super fast. And I've always kind of said, although Aspinall's super fast, I think people overrate his speed just a tad bit based on the fact that he's able to outspeed and, beat these heavyweights to the punch that are stuck in the mud. But I think him and Gane are going to be relatively similar in speed, and they were. I didn't think either guy had the big speed advantage, but you got to give some credit to Gane. I underestimated him. A lot of people underestimated him. And I'm not talking about Gane as if he won the fight. I mean, he eye-poked Tom Aspinall. Aspinall was still looking decent. He was still looking fast. I mean, he could have gotten a KO in the second round. Could have still won the fight. Could have gotten a takedown. Could have even won a decision. We don't know. It was competitive. Maybe Aspinall was just going to have a rusty start, right? And he was in there with the rusty kickboxing. But early on, it looked like Gane was having a good round. And given that Gane has a ton of 5-round experience and that, you're able to almost get out of the first round against someone as dangerous as Aspinall, and you're the one that's damaged his face real bad, and Aspinall's energy is starting to get a little bit nervous, it seems, when he's doing the handshake buddy moment in the middle of the octagon. It looked like things were going well for Gane, okay? Even though it was close, the trend looked like it was maybe starting to favor Gane. Now, again, it was too soon for us to really know what the heck was going to happen. I was still kind of confident that at some point Aspinall is going to find the shot. The point that I'm making here is this was competitive. And I think a lot of people kind of understood that Gane would be able to make it somewhat competitive. But I picked Aspinall by a first 3-minute KO. And I also think he'd be able to topple Gane over quite easily because, we talk about the threat of the takedown and how that can set up strikes. There's always the threat of the KO with Aspinall, and therefore Gane would be worried about the power coming back in his direction, and maybe Aspinall would have, that as a distraction to set up his takedowns. He shot one takedown, didn't really give it his all, didn't really impose his will 100% on that one takedown, but Gane did a really good job of getting out of the way of it and shutting it down. So this was not going to be the typical demolition job. It was going to be a fight. It was a fight where Tom Aspinall was going to be forced to make adjustments. And we were about to see the version of Tom Aspinall that we've always kind of wanted to see, but we never thought we would soon. A lot of us didn't think it would come in this matchup, that Gane wasn't going to be the one to really bring him into the middle rounds. He was saying he was going to bring Tom into deep waters. It looked like we could have got there, and we could have, for the first time, seen a lot of Aspinall's game. And you know what? Even though it didn't go that far, I still feel like I saw another big portion of his game. Again, landed a spinning body kick, which is pretty good. Had a couple of crafty head kicks that just barely missed as well. Landed some really solid leg kicks. And again, I feel like we were just about to see Tom Aspinall, if it went to the second round, start to pull more tools out of his tool bag, maybe implement a heavier grappling approach, right? Maybe find his timing a little bit more. And maybe on Gane's side, we were about to see him start to avalanche, start to really take over and gain confidence and hit a flow state. We don't know. And that's why this sucks so much that Aspinall hasn't fought since last summer, and Gane had a fucking, bit of a stinker in his last fight as well. This fight was sick while it happened. This was a great fight. It was competitive. And even though I was picking Aspinall, and even though I was rooting for Aspinall, it's rare that we get like a heavyweight title fight that's a bit of a scrap and a bit of a chess match and super high level. And this was a high level chess match and scrap for as long as it lasted. And it just sucks that Gane had to eye poke him. And I don't even think it was necessarily intentional, but Gane does have a history of eye pokes, groin strikes, back of the head shots. Remember in the beginning of the Jones fight, even going into that fight, Jones was always saying, Gane's a bit of a dirty fighter, and, I'm not going to hesitate to let the ref know if he does anything bad. And he groin shotted him early, and Jones took a timeout. We've seen Gane. A lot of people kind of poke fun at his highlight reel. There's a lot of back of the head shots in there. This is not something that's new. I still don't think it's totally intentional. We don't know. Could have been an accident, but then again, a lot of fighters are able to get their one free eye poke in, their one free groin strike in these days. Even though I feel like the refs recently have been getting a little bit better, we have seen actually, even on this card, a couple of moments where refs take points after the first foul. But yeah, this sucks, man. This really sucks. We were just about to get there. We were just about to see, can Aspinall make adjustments and can he get the finish in the second round? Or will this be a 5-round chess match? Will this be a war? Will this be an all-time great fight? It was a high action-packed fight. This was a high-volume, scrappy fight. The first round, this shit could have gotten crazy in the second. Usually the first round of a fight is not the craziest round if it starts a little bit scrappy. Usually it's the second, the third round that's the craziest. And we could have seen something great, and we're not going to see these guys fight for some time. And they should get back in there soon, but they're probably going to take at least 3 months off, and it's a heavyweight fight, and the heavyweights always take their time. We're probably not going to see this for another 5 months, maybe 6, 7 months. So, unfortunately, yeah, that's it. That's it. I know that some people are going to be saying things like Gane was on his way to winning, Gane was on his way to dominating, Aspinall's overrated. I don't think you can say clearly that Gane was on his way to winning. Yes, he was, in my opinion, a little bit ahead, but not by far. He was, in my opinion, 100% winning just because he got damage off. He had Aspinall's nose super bloody. He was landing a bunch of really good jabs. Aspinall had better variety. He was mixing it up a little bit better, and he did land some good shots upstairs, but there were a lot of moments where he was whiffing and Gane was getting out of the way, and I think that to the judges that would also look really good. This was close, though. It was close, and I think there's going to be some people that are saying Gane was dominating because he may have exceeded your expectations or may have exceeded a lot of people's expectations, but that doesn't always mean that, it just maybe Aspinall didn't have his demolition job, and therefore people think, oh, Gane was mogging him or whatever. It was new. It is a new thing to see Aspinall get tested like this. This was his hardest fight, but again, we didn't even get past the first round. So, yeah. And you know what? Again, even though we can't say decisively that, oh, Gane was on his way to win, I mean, you just can't say that. Who's to say Aspinall doesn't go out there second round, grappling heavy approach, take him down and sub him? Who's to say Aspinall doesn't catch him, right? Who's to say Gane doesn't catch Aspinall and knock him out too? You don't know. He actually landed early on in this fight a really solid right-hander. Maybe it was even an elbow, caught Aspinall on the way in, and he kind of wobbled for like a split second. He wasn't really hurt, but it definitely stung him. So you never know what would have happened. This is heavyweight, right? Yeah, man, this fucking sucks. Terrible. Just so unfortunate that this is how it ends. Well, at least, fortunately for both guys, because I'm sure, Gane's definitely going to want another shot, but Aspinall is not going to want to leave this chapter behind him and fight someone else in the meantime. He's going to want to get back in there with Gane. He's probably not that pleased with how competitive it was either way. He's just going to want to get this one back. And, fortunately for the case for this fight being made next, that's strengthened by the fact that Volkov versus Almeida sucked. And that's mostly on Almeida, but still, we should see this ran back. You know what? Run it back in December. I don't see why not. I mean, I guess that they may have gotten a little bit dinged up in this fight, but still, you've got a couple of months. rebook it. But they're probably going to wait until they go back to the UK in all likelihood. But yeah, this was interesting. We did see Aspinall get tested. We 100% saw him get tested. Who knows how that would have went? And, I know some people are going to clown Aspinall, and they're going to be comparing his performance, what just happened, to Jones, and how Jones had no trouble, took no damage. But, you can say that about any fighter that's had a good performance. They've had their fair share of competitive fights. Jones had the Reyes fight. Jones had, competitive fights as well. It was bound to happen eventually that Aspinall was going to be tested. I mean, I just didn't think it would come this soon. So I'm wrong. My prediction did not come true. I predicted a demolition job. I predicted Aspinall to run through Gane and have no issues. And even though I still could have gotten my ultimate pick right and just picking him to win, he didn't demolish Ciryl Gane. He didn't easily handle him on the feet either, and was getting stung up a little bit. So, yeah. And this makes Alex Pereira moving to heavyweight all that much more interesting, right? Because I'd love to see Pereira, a former Glory kickboxer, multiple-time champion, double champ in the UFC, one of the greatest heavier weight class strikers we've ever seen, get in the cage with Aspinall and Gane. And a lot of people, even though you guys know I'm a big fan of Aspinall and I'm high on Aspinall, I've always said, lighter man skill, high output, super technical kickboxing of Alex Pereira. I don't care if Aspinall is making easy work of some of these heavyweights. That's a tough fight. And after seeing this, again, we don't necessarily know that Alex would win, but I kind of like Alex's chances at heavyweight. I think that he could make something happen. I think he could have a competitive striking battle with both of these guys. Okay? But, yeah, crazy. Insane. I wish we saw more. It's so unfortunate. I wish we saw more. But then again, what's Aspinall supposed to do? Go out there just to appease people, even though he can't see and he's blind as a bat? I just don't think that's smart for him to do. But let's get on to the co-main event. Virna Jandiroba versus Mackenzie Dern. Listen, this was not an amazing fight, but it wasn't the worst fight. All right? It was a little bit anticlimactic just because, you can't say anticlimactic because I don't think people expected this to be an amazing fight. But the point that I'm making is it was a 5-round fight where you knew nobody was going to get finished, and therefore you knew it was going to go the distance. All right? It just didn't seem like at any point they had the power or they had the advantage on the ground to put the other one away. That being said, competitive, but clearly Mackenzie Dern was in control. I forget what the scorecards were, but I think I gave Mackenzie Dern at least three rounds, man. She won in general. She got at least 3 rounds. But you kind of get the point. Like, Virna early on took her down, realized she couldn't get anything going with that. And Mackenzie Dern was just the faster fighter on the feet. She was just slicker, a little bit faster, had the more damaging blows. Both women were a little bit damaged towards the end of the fight, but the right decision was Mackenzie Dern, all right? And good for her. Congratulations. She is now a champion. That's a huge accomplishment. And I got the pick wrong, but, it was a decent fight. Let's get on to Umar Nurmagomedov versus Mario Bautista. This was very impressive when it came to Umar's wrestling and his pace, his cardio. It looked phenomenal. And bouncing off of that loss to Merab, where his pace and his cardio suffered because he's in there with Merab, I liked what I saw from him. That being said, he got dropped badly in the second round, got hit with a absolutely gnarly head kick. It actually landed, it was a knee to the chin, but Mario Bautista threw it as a head kick. I don't know how Umar took that. Same thing can be said for when he got dropped by Beksat Almakan. Umar's got crazy recovery. He's got really good recovery, and I think that's because of how good his gas tank is, how conditioned he is as well. And I was thinking we were about to see a Mario Bautista finish after Umar kind of dominated the grappling early on. Umar comes back, wins the majority of that second round as well, and I think the judges gave him the second. Now, there's an argument for Mario Bautista still winning that round because that was a big moment. He dropped Umar, there's no doubt about that, and if you get a knockdown, it's not like he got totally washed out in the striking and the grappling for the rest of the round. Umar won the rest of the round, and he was definitely in control of almost all of it. That being said, I still think you could give that round to Mario. And then the third round, I think Umar won. He got off some really good strikes, landed some big shots upstairs, landed a couple of really good question mark kicks, and took down Mario Bautista a bunch of times and kind of controlled him on the ground. Now, Mario Bautista impressed me as well with his ability not to get held down in one specific position and not to get beat up and, not to allow Umar Nurmagomedov to get any damage off or threaten any submissions past the first round where he was looking for the choke. Mario Bautista had a really gritty, scrambly, wrestling and grappling performance as well in this one. It's just that Umar's a little bit slicker, a little bit better, and that's ultimately why I went with Umar. I thought Mario was going to give him issues on the feet. He did give him some issues on the feet, but eventually Umar warmed up into the fight, started, in my opinion, getting the better of most of the striking exchanges towards the end anyway. But the other reason why I picked Umar is because I thought that even though Mario Bautista is a good grappler, I think Umar's on a different level. I think he's simply on a different level. So this was a good win for Umar because you look at Mario Bautista, the way that he fights, you look at his ability to scramble, and you just know that is an elite level fighter. And just because Umar didn't dominate him doesn't mean it's not a good win. Now, is this the statement that he wanted? No. He didn't want to get dropped, and he didn't want to not be able to really do a lot of damage on the ground. He wanted to get a finish, and it ended up being a pretty competitive, high-level fight, even though he controlled the majority of it. I think he won at least 10 minutes of this fight, maybe even more. That being said, given that the champion is so dominant, I don't know if the UFC is going to make Umar Nurmagomedov versus Merab next if Merab is able to beat Petr Yan again, and that's because he didn't get a finish. And I think they may be getting to the point to where in order for them to put Merab in there with a certain fighter, that fighter's got to be built up. And I think if we see Alexandre Pantoja and Merab win later on this year, I think that's going to be the fight. And then maybe Umar's going to have to get another one. I don't know. It was still a good win. I still think he looked good in this fight. But again, you have to look unreal in order for the UFC to want to give you a title shot against Merab, especially in a fight that you get dropped. So, both guys looked highly skilled. Umar's grappling, his pace, his cardio looked really good. That's a good sign if he wants to fight Merab again, but just not the dominant performance he wanted. But I thought it was going to be competitive anyway. I picked 29-28. Volkov versus Almeida. This was a dog shit fight, all right? And that, for the most part, is on Jailton Almeida. He just doesn't try to do damage. When he realizes he can't get a submission, and I actually picked Jailton Almeida by decision. I said I don't think he's going to finish Volkov. I think Volkov's grappling is high level enough, and I think he's strong enough, and he's got the physicality to survive. And that's exactly what he did. But there were moments, like in the first round, where Jailton Almeida, despite getting the takedown and getting like 3.5 minutes of control, Volkov has a moment where he reverses the position with his crafty, improved grappling. And when he gets in dominant position, he's actually looking to do damage. He's actually looking to make something happen. And you see him posturing up with elbows and good ground and pound. And they gave him their first round, even though he lost the majority of it, because he actually landed maybe 15 solid ground and pound strikes on the ground. And Jailton Almeida goes out there, dominates the second round. Volkov has no moments, so you don't give him the second round. But the third round, Almeida controlled the majority of it again. Won probably over 3.5 minutes, but the first part of that round, Volkov was able to keep it standing, pushed Almeida in the clinch, and landed a flurry of solid knees to the midsection. Good strikes up against the fence, and I think that the judges were just not going to give this fight to Jailton Almeida, who did zero damage and did not attempt to finish the fight. There was maybe one moment where he attempted a submission, and that was it. They're not going to give you the win if you're literally holding on for dear life and treating it like a grappling match, So I understand why they went with Volkov. I was thinking they were going to give it to Almeida, but I wasn't shocked when they went with Volkov. And who do I really think won? It's a tough one because it's not like Volkov did a lot. He didn't have many opportunities to do a lot. But, even though Almeida won maybe 12 minutes of that fight, Volkov had 3 minutes where he actually was hurting the other guy. And Almeida didn't hurt Volkov not once. I think he landed one punch the whole fight, maybe 2 knees in the clinch, and that was it. But I think ultimately they went with Volkov because they do not want to reward this fight style. They do not want to reward it. And a lot of people, including myself, have defended Almeida's fight style and have said, well, I think people are being too harsh on him for the Derek Lewis fight and his approach in the Blades fight, because outside of those, he's gotten a finish in every single one of his fights. And therefore, if you're getting a finish, you're super entertaining. And even though I think you could make that argument in the beginning of his career, especially after his last fight too, where he hurt Spivak on the feet and then finished him, just because you're getting a submission does not necessarily mean you have an entertaining style. And I feel like I need to say this again. I said this a while ago. You could have a submission in the second round, but if you have 8 minutes of control where you're not doing anything and you're just pushing someone up against the fence, smudging them into the canvas, just because you're able to get the submission doesn't take away from the fact that the first 8 minutes of the fight is boring. Okay? That doesn't mean you have to get ground and pound. That doesn't mean you have to constantly be throwing up submissions. But there are some fighters that do not even land a lot of ground and pound, maybe don't even get submissions, but they're constantly advancing position and trying to make their opponent miserable and trying to drain their gas tank. Whether that's going for submissions that aren't really there, but they're annoying and it zaps their gas tank and it makes it hard for their opponent to breathe. Or again, it's just, dragging people around in an uncomfortable way. But Almeida just goes out there looking to smudge you on the canvas, hold you in one position. And that's why the ref stood it up. And that's why the ref gave it to Volkov. And I do think he has a boring style. I don't think you can make an argument against that. Even though he gets submissions, and some of his fights have been very entertaining, like the Rosenstrike fight where he goes out there, subs him in one. But you kind of understand what I'm getting at. He gets a lot of finishes, but again, sometimes it's entertaining, but sometimes if he can't get the finish, he resorts to just holding on. And that's it. He doesn't look to do damage. He doesn't really look to advance position. So yeah, Volkov gets it done. And you know what? Because of how anticlimactic the main event was, I don't know if Volkov's going to get the next title shot. But I still think they're going to give him the title shot. So if I'm the UFC, I'm putting Volkov in reserve. And I'm waiting to see what happens with Aspinall and Gane, and I'm promising Volkov the winner. But even though Volkov won, and it's great that he won a fight where, I could see some judges even giving it to Almeida after Volkov got screwed over in the Gane fight, where a lot of us believe he was robbed, including myself. It's good to see him back in the win column, but unfortunately, this fight was so boring, even though it wasn't really his fault, that I still don't know if it's 100% a lock that he will be fighting the winner of Aspinall versus Gane, because if the UFC runs that back, they may do the winner of that versus Alex Pereira. So we'll see. Either way, I want Volkov to take some time and just be there for a title shot if the UFC ever needs him. All right. Rakic versus Azamat Murzakanov. I was so happy to see Azamat Murzakanov get the win. The density maxer. I've said this a million times and people still don't get it. Azamat may look unimpressive, unassuming. He may look like a fat math teacher, but he's actually denser than all of these fighters. There's a different presence about him when he gets in the octagon. There's something different. And Alexander Rakic looked really good early, and he was dwarfing Azamat Murzakanov. Alexander Rakic may be the biggest light heavyweight on the roster, but this is where density maxing prevails over looking like a statue, right? Density wins. Azamat Murzakanov sparks him out with a density maxer jab. And that's what it's all about. People always ask me what my approach would be in a fight against people that are more experienced. I take the Azamat Murzakanov approach, right? High guard, and Azamat's out there floating around the octagon. He's got this ability to just float, and he's super fast as well, super explosive. You just rely on explosive, quick twitch movements, heavily corded movements, right? Like Rogan's always saying heavily corded muscle. Azamat Murzakanov has heavily corded strikes, okay? And Rakic, ultimately, even though he's a well-rounded fighter, and I said he should grapple if he wants to win, but Azamat Murzakanov, he's got an extensive background in Sambo. He's always had a decent base of grappling, did a really good job of stuffing the takedowns. Even when he got taken down, he reversed it early, right? And eventually, you just see Azamat Murzakanov wade into the pocket, and Rakic was landing some good kicks, was doing some good work at range. Rakic has never had great boxing, and he's never had the best boxing defense. And he's never had a ton of power in his hands. Azamat Murzakanov wades in and just cracks him with a sniper-fast jab, packed with density, and knocks out Alexander Rakic. And the ref steps in. Rakic wasn't out cold, but as soon as he got hit with that, he was shelling up and he was done. So Azamat gets it done. I have picked him to win every single one of his UFC fights. And it's clear he's the dark horse of this division, and I actually think he has potential to be a champion. Like, he's that good. Who does that to Rakic? Really? Who does that to Rakic? Jiri Prochazka, I mean, Jiri does what Jiri does. Jiri always wins, right? I still would pick Jiri over basically everyone. But the point that I'm making is Azamat Murzakanov knocked out Alexander Rakic in a matter of minutes. Like, that was a schooling, right? It wasn't really a schooling. It was a bit of a demolition job, to be honest. I mean, listen, Rakic still had his moments, but, like, that was a in and out, fast, like, took no damage kind of performance for Azamat. And so if Pereira does move to heavyweight, I want to see Azamat in a number one contenders fight next. That's for sure. All right. And he was animated after that. He was super animated. So I'm happy. Really happy for him. Let's get on to Nasrat Haqparast versus Quillan Salkilld. This was a scary KO. This was one of those KOs where, Quillan Salkilld head kicks Nasrat Haqparast, knocks him out cold. Nasty KO. Face plants him. He's out snoozing. First thing I see is Nasrat Haqparast twitching on the ground. So I know it's a bad KO. And for about 3.5 minutes, Nasrat is unresponsive. And a couple of minutes after he's knocked out, usually they're getting the winner in there with the ref, and Bruce Buffer's going to announce the fact that he just knocked him out, but they're taking more time and they're holding it off for even more because Nasrat still isn't responsive and they're just waiting for something. And they zoom up on him and they zoom up on his face and it doesn't look like he's there. It still looks like he's out cold. And I was very concerned. I was really, really concerned for Nasrat. You never want to see something fatal in the octagon. And thankfully, Nasrat Haqparast was able to come to, and he is fine. I hope he's fine, but he was good. He was good ultimately. I don't know. I mean, I hope that he's still okay after he goes to the doctor, gets his head checked out and all that. But that was a nasty KO. I was concerned. I was really concerned. I think we were all concerned. And for Quillan Salkilld, an amazing victory. Really good victory. Nasty head kick. I picked Nasrat to win this. I said that I thought he was going to win because he has more experience and he's fought much better levels of competition. And he's been able to beat guys that I think are more proven than Quillan. But Quillan gets it done. Nasty head kick. He is truly one of the better prospects in the UFC right now. He's been really impressive. So, an amazing KO for Quillan Salkilld. Scary one at that. Very scary KO. And I'm just glad that Nasrat seems to be okay. So, yeah. Let's get on to Ikram Aliskerov versus Jung Young Park. I picked Ikram Aliskerov by KO. And I said if he wasn't going to get the KO, I still think he's going to have the strength advantage in the grappling, a slight technical advantage in the grappling. Even though you guys know that I'm a Jung Young Park Iron Turtle fan, I've picked him to win a lot of his fights. He's a great grappler, I understand that, but not as one-sided as I thought. We could see it. I thought that Ikram might be able to knock him out. He's had a lot of performances where he just goes out there and chins people quickly, and I know how tough the Iron Turtle is, but he's been hurt a few times in his recent fights. But in the second round, it looked like Jung Young Park was starting to turn the tide and started walking down started walking down Ikram Aliskerov, jabbing him up, right? And started to have his patented Iron Turtle kind of performance. It's a close second round, and you hear Khabib telling Ikram Aliskerov, if you look tired, if you show signs of weakness, if you look to be fading, he is going to finish you. And I think that at the start of the third round, it was clear Ikram was exhausted. And it actually did look like Jung Young Park was on his way to finding a big moment. But then Ikram Aliskerov gets a takedown and is able to get the back and is able to control the rest of the round in the grappling. So Ikram Aliskerov was tested. This was a very competitive fight. I know that the judges gave him every single round. But nonetheless, this was a close fight. This is one of those, some people say 50-45 can never be close. This was a 30-27, but it was close. It was competitive. They got the right decision, right? Ikram won, and he should have won. But this was a tough fight for him. But he ultimately got it done because of the grappling advantage. The strength advantage I think he had as well, which also helped him get the better of Jung Young Park on the ground. So, yeah, this was a fight where we got to see him tested. Let's get on to Ludovit Klein versus Mateusz Rebecki. I picked Ludovit Klein to get it done. I said he was going to be the slicker striker, and he proved to be the slicker striker. Was piecing up Mateusz Rebecki, was cutting him up, and I thought it was a mistake that Rebecki took this fight so shortly after his war with Duncan, which he lost. And again, he's a guy that plays to the crowd. He gets dragged into wars, and Ludovit Klein is the slicker, more finesseful striker, and he won the first 2 rounds because of that. Rebecki, super tough, despite losing like a gallon of blood in this fight, went out there, gets a takedown, and dominates the ground game, gets a lot of damage off on the ground. Again, we find out Ludovit Klein injured his foot on the way down to the ground when Mateusz Rebecki was taking him down. But it was a 2-1 fight. I was about to say a 3-2 fight. It was a 2-1 fight. Ludovit Klein edges out the first 2 rounds. Classic Rebecki scrappy fight. I was happy to see that this one was as good as we expected. Valter Walker versus Louis Sutherland. Valter Walker, he's looking like he could be a future heavyweight champ. I am amazed at how this guy had one of the least impressive UFC debuts in history, and now he's a record breaker. 4 heel hook submissions in a row. And I picked him, by the way, to win by heel hook submission in the first round. These heavyweights just aren't ready for the skill level. Like, at this point, since going into this fight, he did 3 heel hook submissions in a row. This is number 4, which is just insane. At this point, these guys know it's coming. They're just not on that level. Valter Walker has mastered the heel hook game. And we always joke around about how heel hooks don't work in high-level MMA, but they can against heavyweights that aren't super high level. That's the thing. And Valter Walker actually has high-level jiu-jitsu. This guy, in my opinion, could be a future heavyweight champ. I don't know who's going to stop this. And given that people are going to be so scared of the heel hooks, he might be able to set up some other submissions as well on the ground. So I am going to continue to pick Valter Walker to win. Depending on how high level his next opponent is, I may just pick another heel hook. And I know that there's Paul Harris that has 4 heel hooks in the UFC, but he doesn't have 4 in a row. This is uncanny. This is insane. Unbelievable stuff from Valter Walker to just get 4 heel hooks in a row. I don't think people understand how impressive that is. And yes, it's at heavyweight, but we're talking about heel hooks. You know, it's one thing if we're talking about flying knees. That's pretty crazy. I mean, that's almost as crazy. But heel hooks, you can't really fluke submissions. I mean, obviously he has a tremendous grappling advantage. We're finding that out time and time again. But these guys know it's coming and they can't do anything about it because of how much better Valter is on the ground. So I say give him a main event. Give him a big main event on a fight night. It's time for a step up in competition. And because of how dangerous his ground game is, I think this guy could be a future champion. You know, I don't know if Aspinall is going to be around when Valter Walker gets up there. Even if he is around, Aspinall, I believe, got submitted back in the day, way back in the day, by a heel hook. So this could be the guy. We don't know. We still have to see what happens with him and Gane. We don't even know what happens there because of how that played out. We've still got to find out who wins Gane versus Aspinall. But, yeah, Nathaniel Wood versus Jose Miguel Delgado. Sick fight. Unbelievable fight. Nathaniel Wood gets it done. And I said, if he can survive the early onslaught, I think he has a great chance to win. I'll be honest, I still think Jose Miguel Delgado edged out that second round. And therefore, I think you could have given him the nod there. But Nathaniel Wood did make the second round very close. I don't think this was a robbery. I know a lot of people are going to say it's a robbery. Miguel Delgado goes out there. Jose Miguel Delgado goes out there. Puts it on Nathaniel Wood. Looks like he's going to have his classic first round finish. Drops Nathaniel Wood with a spinning back fist right on the button, right on the chin. Jumps on him. Towards the end of the round, even though it's been nothing but dominant, Nathaniel Wood drops Jose Miguel Delgado with a right hand. So right off the bat, it was on its way to being a 10-8 in the first round. After Nathaniel Wood got the knockdown, no longer a 10-8, it's a 10-9. Second round, Miguel Delgado starts out the round pretty well, but you see Nathaniel Wood putting the pressure on him, and he's got a lot of that experience. He's been in a lot of these scraps, and he starts working the jab, and he starts finding the lead hook to counter Jose Miguel Delgado. He starts landing a lot of calf kicks that are starting to bother Jose Delgado as well. And I can see them giving him that round. And I think that sometimes the judges, they'll see a really dominant first round, and even if the guy that dominated the first round still edges out the second, the optics of the guy that got dominated in the first round making the second round close, because he exceeds people's expectations so much, they will sometimes give that person the round. And I think that's what happened here. And I'm not going to say that there was no argument for Nathaniel Wood winning the second round. I think he honestly has an argument, but I also think maybe Jose Miguel Delgado won that round. That was a really close round. It could have gone either way. But I gave Nathaniel Wood the third round, another competitive round, but I thought he controlled it. I thought he landed the better strikes. I thought he outlanded Jose Delgado, and he had a couple of moments where he got some crafty takedowns as well. This was a crafty performance for Nathaniel Wood, and a gritty one at that too. So I don't think this was a robbery, but I understand why people are saying it went the wrong way. Either way, this was a really fun fight. Credit to both guys for putting on a good scrap. I picked Chris Barnett. Yeah, I picked Chris Barnett to spinning wheel kick Hamdi Abdelwahab. I got to give credit to Hamdi. Hamdi Abdelwahab has had 2 heavyweight slop fests in a row where he's had the classic Parker Porter kind of decision, thudding heavyweight fights, nothing happens, low skill. He dominated this fight, and maybe it's because, again, it's Chris Barnett, who, let's be honest, is like a featherweight fighting at heavyweight. So, when I say I could be a UFC heavyweight, this is what I'm talking about, guys. All right? Either way, Hamdi Abdelwahab dominated Chris Barnett, took him down, steamrolled him, was able to land the better shots, almost got a finish in the first round, but I think the ref stepped in because there was like a back of the head shot at one point, and that kind of, allowed Chris Barnett to recover a little bit. But yeah, Hamdi gets it done, proves me wrong, and I cannot believe I picked Chris Barnett to win a fight in 2025, but I did. Azat Maxim versus Mitch Raposo, close fight. They give it to Mitch Raposo. I expected this to be rather dominant for Azat Maxim. I know that Mitch Raposo is good. I know he's a tough out, but after seeing what Azat Maxim was able to do against Charles Johnson and Ciryl Gane, I expected him to go out there and kind of school Mitch Raposo, and he definitely didn't school him. This was a close fight, but Mitch Raposo gets it done, and then Mizuki, I picked her to win it, and Mizuki gets it done. All right, plus 330 underdog. I got the underdog pick, man. I got the underdog pick. People were clowning me for that one, but I think I just went 50-50 on picks. This was going to be my 7-6 moment if Aspinall were to win. And if Gane were to win, I would have went 6-7 on picks. So that was the card. Very anticlimactic. We had a lot of good fights on the prelims, but the main card was kind of, it was kind of stinky. Even though the main event was good while it lasted, we didn't get any answers. We got no ultimate answer of who is the better fighter between Aspinall and Gane. And that's just so unfortunate. So either way, hope you guys enjoyed. That's my recap. Until next time.